What an honor to be here with you guys today. Man, I love this church. I tell you, I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have this church. We started coming here back in 2010, and I'll tell you a little bit about where I was before we started coming here. I had been an atheist for about 13 years of my life. Grew up Catholic, but in college renounced it pretty strongly. So I lived for a long time renouncing God, speaking passionately against God. It was, I was fervent with it. I would say, I could easily say I won a number of arguments to the point where you'd say I convinced people there was no God. So my wife and I had kids, and we said, we're going to raise our children with some type of religion, because it felt like kids, when they're growing up, need to have some type of moral standard. No matter what kind of religion we get, I don't really care. Just make sure they grow up in something like that. So we were here, we were living in Fenton, and I had heard she was trying to get me to go to a Catholic church, and I said, no, I'm not going to another Catholic church. And I had heard about this place, the Rock, and I said, man, that place sounds pretty cool. It was a biker church at the time. I think we still have a pretty good hymn ministry here, which is cool. I go, well, that sounds like a cool place. We'll go there. So she started coming here, and she was hearing Pastor West speak, and she goes, I like him. I want you to come with me. And I go, well, yeah, I think I want to come with you too. I want to hear what this guy's feeding you. Yeah, I was arrogant, cocky, know-it-all. I had a lot of that going. So I came, and I wanted to hear what Pastor West had going, and he spoke well. And I liked his message. And what I did was I took all the God stuff and I threw it away. And I go, well, he's a motivational speaker, which is exactly what he is not, right? We all know that here that have seen him. But I go, well, I also want to meet him. So Catherine went to him and said, hey, you know he's coming. He's going to want to meet you. And he's going to try and intimidate you. And I wanted him to know that I wasn't non-existent husband, that I was in the family, that I wanted him to know that I knew what was going on here. I wanted to find out what they were teaching my wife and my kids so that I could undo what he was doing. It's pretty terrible, but it's the truth, right? That was my motive when I was here. So I shook his hand, and I sat in his office, and I made fun of his religion. Made fun of him for thinking certain things. So you're telling me you believe about a whale? The guy walked on water, all this stuff. You believe in evolution? So I'll tell you, I was harsh to him and his beliefs. And I wouldn't say I opened up in a friendly atmosphere. But Wes took it in a way that I think all Christians should take it. And he took it and said, yes, I believe that. Unapologetically, very clear, this is what I believe. Yes, I believe that. Yes, you can laugh at that. I'll tell you why I believe it. He'll pick up the book and he'll tell me what's in here and why it is what it is. And he did that fervently, but kind. He didn't lose his temper with me. He didn't lash back. He didn't get defensive. I liked him. I liked him right off the bat. I liked how strong he was in his word and his convictions. We just disagreed. And then frankly, he goes, hey, I'd love to keep talking with you. And I didn't get that a lot. You know, normally I'd talk with some Christians and some things like that. And like I said, I think I broke some of them down. They go, man, I don't want to talk to this guy again. He has too many questions. He's poking at my faith. He's antagonistical, and it turned him off. Wes wasn't that way. He goes, he almost like fed on it. And then he's a loving friend as well. So I'd sit in the back there in the back corner, back in 2010 when there wasn't as many people at the Rock. And I got to watch the church grow. I got to watch Wes speak. He'd sit up here and he'd say, with your heads bowed and your eyes closed, you know, let's pray. And it would be Wes and I looking at each other because I wasn't bowing my head. Yeah. Like, I'm not bowing my head. Who are you telling me to bow my head? You bow your head. But that didn't discourage him, right? And he kept coming. So every Saturday, we'd get together and we'd go have breakfast. And I would pick his sermon apart, and I would go, hey, you said this on Sunday, and you can't say this and mean this, and these two things don't jive together. You were saying this one week, and then you said this another week. I remember all these things, and I'd try and trick him up. I was trying to find a hole so that I didn't have to believe in God. It's a lot easier to be an atheist, I tell you. People think that, and I used to say this, that Christianity can be a crutch, right? Oh, you just need God because you can't deal with life. You need God because you can't deal with this. It's way harder to be a Christian than it is an atheist. And I'll tell you, I was trying to run from it, I think. So I'd meet with him every Saturday. We'd go through it. Wes would give me the context of the book and how I was taking it out of context and things like that. He knew the book well. There were times where I challenged him on a few things and he didn't know the answer, so he wasn't arrogant and he didn't make anything up. He would go back and he would research these things and he would look into it, and then he'd call me back up at work and go, hey, I got an answer for you. If you want to sit and chat, we can. Otherwise, I can just give it to you over the phone. So we chatted. In addition to just having breakfast, Wes and I would go golf together. We'd go hunting together. He'd come over to my house. We'd watch mixed martial arts fights together. We were friends, right? Antagonistical. I mean, I was harsh to him, and he was a friend to me. So I ask you, do you have people like that in your life today? Do you have people that turn you off, but you still befriend them? That's your job here, right? If you're a Christian here today, and you came in, you know the Lord, and you're saved, do you have people that you befriend that might violate some of your sensibility, that might make fun of you, but you still care for them? Do you go to them? Do you spend time with them? Do you have that fellowship? Christians can sometimes sit in our own little pocket of comfortness. We have lots of community groups and prayer groups and Bible studies, and those are all wonderful things to rejuvenate your strength in your core. But do you get out, right? Pastor John West was here about last year this time. It was summer. And he preached at one time, and he talked about some statistics. And I'm an engineer too, so I'm not going to go crazy on statistics with you. But he says there's 7.5 billion people in this world, and 2.5 billion claim to be Christians. And out of that some of them say we're spiritual and we're kind of this, there's really only about 800 million Christians out of that 7.5 billion. So you're outnumbered, right? So if we were to sit here today and I'd go, hey, let's bow our heads and let's think about all the people that we care for the way Pastor West cared for me. Could we sit here for 10 minutes and go through the litany of all the people that we go out and see? We make an effort to go out and see them. We pray for them. We sit with them. We befriend them even when they violate some of our sensibility. Could we sit here for 10 minutes and go through your list of people? Think about that a bit, right? 10 minutes. We're way outnumbered. Now, if you're here and you don't know the Lord, well, we can walk you there, right? There's plenty of evidence that's there, and I'll get through some of it. But I'll tell you, some people say we're praying for them. And you should, right? The Bible says take all your worries and your anxieties and place them on the Lord. Don't worry about what the future will bring. Place your heart on the Lord. But that's for you and your heart, right? Now, if you're praying for this other person, good. And if you're convicted for them, good. But maybe you should do more than pray. Maybe the fact that you're convicted and you constantly keep coming back to it is the Holy Spirit telling you that's your job. Maybe God already did the work and softened their heart and they're ready to hear it, and you're still sitting at home praying. Praying is good. I'm not saying praying's wrong. I'm saying you might have to put some work in, though, right? And that goes for kind of everybody here, right? So some people go, oh, I don't like to really get out and go do that. I'm kind of a shy person. I don't like to talk. Not everybody's 6'5" and boisterous with a big voice and comes out. Now, but it needs to come from all people. You know, I wonder what would happen if Wes had just stopped. Would somebody else in here have picked up? Did somebody else know that I was an atheist going through this trouble? If he had just said, I can't make it this time, and he was just kind of getting beat up, and I could tell he was beat up from time to time, would somebody else have picked up the ball? because we're way outnumbered. 800 million, 7.5 billion people, right? So I'll tell you, if you're not with the Lord right now, when you have doubts, wonderful. I'm glad you came in today. This is the place where you can get imbibed with a beautiful community of people. I love this church. I do. It's a great group of people. Everyone walks around with such joy. He used to befuddle me going, how are you guys so happy all the time, man? And it is great, man. It's imbibing. It's energy. It's positive. So I'll give you a little piece on what I went through in my head from atheism to Christianity, just to show you a piece of work that you got to put some work into it to go find it, though. Because I'll tell you, when I became a Christian, and I got baptized after a long time with sitting down with Wes and going through this stuff, I'd sit down then and I was convicted for those that I had talked to before and I think turned into atheists. I know some of them claim to be atheists. So I'd sit with them, I go, well, here's what I was thinking, man, when I was sitting back here, and these are the things I went through, and it came out poor, like, they'd throw a question at me, and I'd get broken. Whoops, I don't have an answer to that. So then I'd go back, and I'd go try and figure it out. How do you tell them this? How do you tell somebody about the Bible when they believe everything in here is false? Because that's what you're working with. Have you talked with somebody out there that's an atheist? They go, well, you try and quote the Bible to them. I go, well, I don't believe anything in the Bible. Right? So what I did was I started outside the Bible, and I go, well, tell me what historians say about the life of Jesus Christ. I want non-Christian historians. So you look up a few guys. There's Philly the Younger, there's Roman senators, I'm blanking out now on some of their names, but there's Roman senators, governors, there's Jewish historians. Jewish historians are obviously not Christian. They're the ones that crucified Jesus. And these guys were writing, and they were recording history, and they were putting together pieces of documentation when they were trying to persecute Christians. So they go, these Christians, we're trying to blame them for this fire, and we're trying to get them blamed for this, and we're going to go persecute these, but there's so many Christians. What do we do? So if you look through these historical writings, and by the way, there's about 24,000 pieces of evidence that corroborates the New Testament. Not all of those are non-Christian. Most of them are Christian. These non-Christian ones say this, though. He was a wise man. He was a revered teacher. They said he did miraculous feats. Some called it sorcery. But they said he did stuff that people couldn't explain. Nobody said he did stuff and it was a farce. Nobody said he put on an act. Nobody said any of that stuff. And these guys hated Christians. They were persecuting Christians. They said he was crucified under Pontius Pilate on the eve of Passover. And then they said he was believed to have been resurrected, because these people obviously didn't believe that he was resurrected. But there was a huge following of people that believed he was resurrected and that they worshiped him like a god. Yeah? So there was a following around him like no other. So you go, okay, well that's enough historical evidence for me. If you need more, there's more. So we can go back in and dive through more, but you go, okay, that's enough to start. So he was a person, and he could have done some things and faked this stuff over here, but he obviously had a massive amount of influence over a people in order to be able to have them worship him as if he was a god. They were worshiping idols and all kinds of things at this time, but they worshiped a man that walked on the face of the earth. How influential must he have been to be able to be that kind of a person, right? To have made that kind of a mark on the society in which he lived. These are historical facts. You'd go, probably one of the most influential men to ever walk the face of the earth. That seems logical, right? Still talking about him 2,000 years later. The Bible's the most sold book in the entire world, right? It was written with 66 books by 40 different authors over a period of greater than 1,500 years. Now, how the heck do you write if Pastor Scott and I wanted to write a memo to you guys today, and we conference called together, and he wrote half of it and I wrote the other half, it would be literary junk. But we got 40 authors over 66 books in 1,500 years with no internet, with no phone. It's the best-selling book in the world. That's some influence, right? That's wild influence. Holy smokes, how did it preserve that long? And then you go, what did Jesus do with all this influence? He walked around, and he had people following him everywhere. They worshiped him as to a god. Now think about anybody else with influence in this world. They all gain from it. They all have some kind of financial backing. They got a Nike shoe contract. You got some cool stuff. You got a posse of people. He had a posse of people. But what did he get? He got a house. Son of Man has no place to lay his head. So why would he do it if it was a farce? Why would he go through all this if he was making it up, right? It doesn't make any sense. So you go, he had all of that. He went through it. He suffered. He died. All right, so he made an influence, right? Now at the end of it, he's crucified, and he either does or he doesn't resurrect, right? But it's all of you that makes this thing true to me. That's the conversion. You go, anyone else with a matter of influence would have waned, right? Michael Jordan, easily one of the best basketball player to ever walk the face of the planet, right? At one point. And then you'd go, well, then he wanes a little bit longer, and depending on your age, you'd go, no, now it's James, right? LeBron's now it, right? So it fades after it goes. So you go, if I talk to somebody older, you go, it's still Michael Jordan. You talk to somebody younger, they go, who's Michael Jordan, right? Now, Jesus didn't fade. Why not? Well, he didn't fade because people told all these stories. And if he told all these stories, would that be enough? I don't think so. I think the only thing that's the true evidence that Jesus Christ was the Son of God is the light of the world living through you, and that you live with the light of God in you. Amen. So it's a changed life. And you go, why? Why are you so different? How do you walk with so much joy, like I was talking about earlier? How do you have so much happiness in your life? Your world is crumbling around you. You just had a death in the family. There's sickness all over. How are you still okay? And the answer is Jesus Christ. Do you say it? All of us. Do we say it? So young, old, middle-aged, overweight, everyone needs to say it, right? Because we're outnumbered. So if you're young and you're in here and you're playing a sport, my kids are playing soccer and track and they're doing school and things like that, and somebody comes up and goes, wow, you're really fast. How are you so fast? I don't know. I practice at it. Uh-oh. That was your opportunity, right? You had it. Well, the Lord gave me a talent, and I didn't want to waste that talent, so I work at it so I can make the Lord happy with the talents that he's given me, and I can make the most of those talents. If you're great at school and you got an A in your test, wow, you're really smart. Yeah, I didn't really study that much. Oh, well, I don't have to study very much because I understand it quickly because the Lord gave me a talent, right? So Matthew wrote about this in Matthew 25, verses 24 to 30. Let's go there for a moment. Now I'll give you a little backlog on the story, and it's what do we do with our talents? How well do we use our talents? And there's a master of the house. He's leaving. He's got a bunch of slaves. He's got many possessions, right? So he's got all these possessions, and he takes some of his slaves, and he gives one guy 5 talents. He gives another guy 2, and another guy 1, and then he leaves. The first guy got 5, turns it into 5 more. The next guy that got 2, turns it into 2 more. The guy that had 1 was flipped out, and he was scared that he was going to lose his master's 1 talent that he gave him, so he went and buried it in the sand. So then he comes back, and he's really pleased with the first 2, the one that got 5, the one that got 2. And he handed these talents out, by the way, according to their abilities. So everyone has different abilities in here, right? Everyone has different skills. You shouldn't be mad if you got the 1 talent, somebody else got 5. You got your talents. That's what you got. These guys turned it into a double, both of them. But then he comes back and he talks to the one that got 1. And the one who had received 1 talent came up and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid, and I went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. I gave it back to you. You gave me a talent. I gave it back to you.
exactly the same. It says, but the master answered and said to him, you wicked, lazy slave. You knew that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival I would have received my money with interest. Therefore, take away the talent from him and give it to the one that has 10 talents. For everyone who has more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. Throw out the worthless slave into the outer darkness, into the place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Whew. That's harsh, isn't it? What are you doing with your talents? So are you working at things to bring people to the Lord? It's not easy, right? You got to take those talents that you've been given, and you got to do things outside of your comfort zone. I'm doing one right now. Way outside of my comfort zone, right? Back when I was in high school, I played football. And many might look at me and say, yeah, of course. It was 100 pounds ago, so I was a string bean. I looked more like a basketball player than a football player. But I'll tell you, in football, when you went through your lazy season of summer and you came into like the beginning of practices and you got your helmet and you got your helmet all fitted and a big old red mark on your head because your helmet was too tight, and we opened up with what we called 3-a-day practices. You guys might have had 2-a-day practices. That's because you guys were soft. So 3-a-day practices were the start of football practice, and it would go from 7 o'clock in the morning. We'd have basically like a practice from 7 to about 9. They'd have a break, and then we'd go from like 10 to 12, and then we'd go eat lunch and then take a nap in the wrestling room, of all places, on wrestling mats. Who would sleep on a wrestling mat? It's disgusting. Wake up and then get all your sweaty pads back on and go back out from 1 to 3. And that was every day for 2 weeks. So this consisted of, we'd go out to this is the hottest part of August, and I grew up down in South Ohio in Dayton. And we practiced on our practice field, and it was where the overflow parking was. So the ground was hard as a rock. There's barely a blade of grass on the ground. It's like concrete dirt all packed in. And this is where you started your hitting. You started hitting, conditioning, learning your plays. And I was a sophomore at the time, and I was lucky enough to be pulled up into the varsity. So I was running like second line against the first line. There's a behemoth of a defensive end. I had to block it each time. So I'd be up and I'd go to block him, and he would toss me aside like a rag doll, and I'd hit that awesome padded concrete, and it would rip your forearms apart. I remember I had scabs from my elbow all the way up almost to my wrist. And you're blocking and you're hitting helmets with your forearms. Your forearms are all bruised and bloody, and you're going through all this stuff, and it's every run. Boom, boom, boom. Every time it's 95 degrees outside, it feels like it's 100. You're sweating in all this helmet and mask and all this kind of stuff, and you're out of shape. You go through all this stuff, and then another one, and then you go rest, and maybe you take a shower, but they had no heat on in the high school, so you'd take a freezing cold shower just to get the junk off, and then you'd put that sweaty junk back on, and then you'd go back out there and do it again. Now, at the end of the day, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when they're getting ready to finish practice, this is where we're smoked, right? We put in all of our effort, and we're really dogged out. Now it's time for conditioning. So they split us up, and we'd be running conditioning. You'd run the width of the field back, the width of the field back, and then stop, and then the next group goes. And then when they came back, you had to go again. And it seemed like it was an eternity. And we're building up our conditioning, right? This is how you got to get your heart. This is fourth quarter, right? You got to be able to get your skill set, so when they call on you in fourth quarter and we're going into overtime, you got to have some oomph left in you. You got to have some speed. You can't be dogging it out of your blocks. So if you didn't hit your times, then you got bear crawls at the end of the day. And bear crawls, for those of you that don't know, I'll probably pull a muscle if I tried to do one right now. It's your hands and feet on the ground, butt down, and you had to crawl from the practice field all the way back to the locker rooms. It was about a half a mile. So by this point, you already are out of shape. You've missed all these runs. There's guys throwing up. There's no water until you get back. They're dehydrated because it's been 95 degrees outside and we've been practicing for 6.5 hours. You're smoked. And then you're crawling on your way back. The only time they wouldn't yell at you if you dropped a knee is because when you dropped a knee, you were throwing up. So you're puking through your face mask. You got vomit hanging off your face mask, and then they go, all right, get up. So then you get back up, you keep going, you stop again, puke, and then you get in. So and that's practice, right? What do we practice for? We got to get our vigor together so when we go back in and we go back in and we can win, right? We get our talents and we hone those talents. We're not going to bury them in the sand. What would you say if I told you there was somebody on the team that was one of the best people on the team? They never had to do the bear crawls because they won all the conditioning races. They had great hands. They could run, leap, block. Phenomenal football player. But every Friday night, they chose not to play. They go, I'm not going to do that. I just want to come to practice. They'd come 5 days of practice, then they'd sit out on Friday night. It's crazy, right? Who would ever go through that kind of pain to not play? How many Christians do we have that know the Bible well? That know the Bible really well, but don't go out and dig it up and mix it up with some people? Do we sit in our own house? Do we sit in our community groups? We want to go out with our friends that we made at church. It's great, isn't it? But I tell you, if you go out and do it, you'll be exhausted. You'll be tired. You'll be beat up. And you'll feel it. I mean, I knew it days when Wes would come in and sit on my couch, and he knew I was going to litter him with questions. And he could just sink in, and like, oh, he knew he was going to come, and he kept going. Now, the reason you go back and you get into your community groups is to revitalize. It's to rejuvenate, to repower yourself, going, this guy asked me this, and I didn't have an answer, and man, I got to go look some stuff up. Maybe you know the answer. Have you ever had this conversation with it? That's what it's for. But if you're not doing that, you're going to practice 3 days, and you're not playing the game. What's the point? The point's to win. It's to win lost souls, right? 1 Corinthians 9:19. I think Jesus wants us to be winners, right? For though I am free from all men, I have made myself a slave to all, so that I may win more. To the Jews I became as a Jew, so that I might win Jews. I'll skip ahead a bit because he keeps going on with win. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, so that by all means we can save some. So who are we going after? Are we winning? Do you go places that bother you? Do you go to a bar? I'm not saying that if you have an alcohol problem, you should go to a bar. And I'm not saying you should go to a bar and get drunk. But I'm saying there's people there that need to be saved. Right? Somebody's got to talk to them. Do you keep going back to them? Do you go back every Friday, every Tuesday, and see those people and talk to them? Do you befriend them, go to their house, go to their parties? Are you out in it? Are you become a Jew to go be with the Jews? Have you become weak to go be with the weak? It's you can see it. It's for all people. It's not just this person that's boisterous from here. I want weak people too, right? They need all types. We're outnumbered. And the point is to win. We're meant to widen the road. I'll give you one more piece of scripture here. It's in Ezekiel. And this is if you don't want to. And if you feel like you're afraid to do so, go back and read Ezekiel. We'll start off with Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 10. Moreover, he said to me, Son of man, take into your heart all my words which I will speak to you, and listen closely. Now, what are those words? Pretty simple, right? It's this. Take in all the words that I will speak to you, and listen closely. And Wes teaches us on every Sunday, sometimes on Saturdays here. We've got Encore, we've got Bible studies. That's what that's for. Take in all the words that he speaks to us, right? Bring it in. Now, it doesn't mean that until you know the entire Bible, word for word, all the way through, you can quote all your scripture, that's when you go out. No, it just means get into it. Because I'll tell you, if you were playing football and all you did was practice, I'll tell you why that guy didn't exist. That guy that I told you about he didn't exist. He didn't exist for two reasons. There's one, is no one in their right mind would go through that kind of pain and not play the game. And two, there's no way he's the best player on the team if he never played a game. No way. You got to go out, play the game, and fail before you can be the best player on the team. So even if you know all the words, you're not going to be the best at this discipleship. You're not going to be the best at getting out there. You got to go out and get bloody. You got to go get hit by somebody that's asking you a question that violates your soul. And how do you act? Are you kind? Are you compassionate? Or do you lash back? Now, unless you've had that question asked to you, you're not there. You don't know that answer, right? And if you don't want to do it, we can go to verse 17. Son of man, I have appointed you a watchman to the house of Israel. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, warn them from me. Whenever I say to the wicked, you will surely die, and you do not warn him or speak out to warn the wicked from his wicked ways, that he may live, that wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at your hand. Now that sounds intimidating. That says it's your duty. It doesn't say it's your duty unless you have a work policy against speaking religion. It doesn't say it's your duty unless you got a family member that really isn't going to like to hear this and it's really going to ruin your family dinners. Instead, he's going to require that person's blood from your hand if you don't speak up. Now, that's intense, all right? So we all know what we need to do. But I'll tell you, we're outnumbered. But this room is strong. And Christians are strong. And we've got the best coach known to man, right? And we've got a great playbook, and it's a winning game. If you can take me from the vile area that I was of atheism, outwardly against it, and bring me back to where I am now with strong conviction. I'm still willing to be wrong, but I doubt you're ever going to find somebody that's going to ask me that question that makes me wrong. Keep bringing it. Keep playing the game. Get out there and win. Get beat up, because you will. And then get stronger for it. You'll find that your life is imbibed in it. There was a time, I think, where Jesus was doing all this work. And then he said he was exhausted, and he would go out and get on the boat, and he goes, just take me away from shore. He'd be with his disciples, that he could just rest a bit. If you haven't had that feeling of exhaustedness, you're not doing it right. And then come back to this community, feel better, sing our songs, feel our joy. Regroup, and let's get back out there and do it again. So I thank you for the time to be able to sit up here and speak with you. I'd like to end with just a bit of moment of silence and prayer. I'd like to think about those people in our lives that need the Lord. I'd like you to sit and pray about what you're going to do. You can pray for the Lord to soften their hearts, and you should. But what's the best way you can go about it? How can you speak to them in a way that they'll be accepting of? They'll accept your friendship? How do you grow a bond with that person? How do you create a follower in Jesus through you so that your heart is clean? Thank you.